Jolly
I think
good.
the rest of the attendees are sort of muted at the moment, so
A couple of yeses have come through, so thank you guys. Appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. Very quickly, a couple of slides just to sort of explain what we're going to cover, and then we'll hand over to Vishal. So firstly, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you all taking the time. My name's Simon Favag, and I'm joined by Vishal, who's going to take you through the Power BI training today.
hello everybody.
Next slide, please, Vish. So who are we? We sort of experience group. We drive business efficiencies through digital transformation. And what does that mean? Can you go to the next slide, please, Vish? So experience group, many of you will know us through kind of maybe one product offering or maybe two, but experience offer a range of business tools, and we group those tools into 4 pillars: CRM, ERP, cloud, and managed IT. And we feel these pillars are one of our sort of key strengths, is that these products don't exist in isolation. And Power BI is a perfect example of how we drive those business efficiency through digital transformation. You know, the next slide, please. So Power BI is a fantastic tool from Microsoft that allows you to connect your data, which could be held in more than one database or program, one of those pillars that we looked at, and then build sort of detailed reports which can be shared with your colleagues. And these reports offer the ability for you to drill down to underlying transactions, can be tailored to suit the audience, i.e. you can sort of just show the right people the right elements of information. And once those reports have been shared, you can access them on your phone, on a tablet, your computer. They could be embedded within your applications, or even as we do at Experience, we have them displayed on wallboards in the office. So I just want to give you a bit of a quick intro to what Power BI is, and now I'm going to hand over to Vishal, who will take you through how this can all be achieved and how we can set up those reports. So over to you, Vishal.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. Hello, everybody. My name's Vishal Karavajra from Experience. I'm one of the Sage 200 consultants, and I'll be running through the Power BI presentation today with you guys. So it's going to be done in sort of 5 steps. There's quite a lot to cover, but we'll get through as much of this as we can, and sort of everybody can have a great understanding of exactly how Power BI works. So we'll see how we get the data in, connect it up, how we look at relationships between the data, how we can then model that data to clean it up, tidy it up, make your queries faster. Then we get into the fun part of visualizing the data, creating bar charts and maps, and everything visualizes together when you click on things. And then finally, you can publish that information online so it can be shared out to people in the organization or make it public facing. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to now change over to my VM. Hopefully you guys should be able to see my VM. Right, so what I've got up at the moment is a particular Power BI.
Very quickly, one thing I forgot to say, guys, feel free to pop questions in the chat room. Yes, Michelle, we'll be able to send a handout at the end, so the PowerPoint and some of the areas we've covered. But yeah, if you pop any questions in the chat box, and we'll try and cover those at the end of the session, if that's okay. Sorry, Bishop.
No problem. Any questions you guys have that come up while I'm doing the presentation, just drop them down into the chat, and then we'll try to cover all these questions at the end as much as we can. If there's anything outstanding, then obviously we'll come back to you in some sort of article, or we'll get that information back across to whoever needs it. Okay, so what I've got up on screen at the moment is a particular Power BI presentation that I've been looking at recently regarding the coronavirus, and this is from the Johns Hopkins University. And you can see how this is sort of set up. It's got table information on the right here, totals of the total number of cases, a map in the middle showing you where these cases are, a few more tables and totals at the top, and then a little chart here with the amount of cases that they have per day. So as you click along these different items in the table, you'll see the map jumps across and then gives you different information depending on what you've now clicked on. And it's one that I've been sort of looking at recently myself in the current situation we're in. So if I just come back, minimize this down, this is something that everyone can then start to try and build using Power BI. It's a visualization type tool more than like a reporting tool that you would get, such as Excel based, just data and tables in Excel with columns that go on for ages. Okay, so if I come back over to Power BI, this is the Power BI application in a brand new blank format. I will show you some Power Packs that we've created that I do when I go out and train on this product, but a little bit of understanding and how it works on the back end. There are some technical aspects, such as actually how you connect to the data. So people that use Sage, you probably haven't seen this area much. This is where your actual data sits in the back end, and this is where Sage keeps all the information that you see when you're running Sage 200. So we need to connect to this database, and then we can start to bring this data into Power BI, model it, and then visualize it. Okay, so technical issues here that people that would be setting it up in IT, people that use Power BI would need data reader access to actually connect and get into this database to then pull that data back into Power BI. It's only ever read only. It never ever pushes anything back into your Sage database. It will only suck data out and then bring it into your Power BI. Okay, so that's a little bit about the back end, where the data sits that we'll connect up to. So how do we connect to the data? A little bit about look and feel. So when you're looking at the Power BI application, at the top you've got the ribbon. So this is Microsoft standard ribbons, little tabs at the top that will show you different ribbon information as you click on them. On the left side here, you've got these 3 buttons. So these are 3 key buttons. One is your modeling, once you get the data in, or your relationships. Then you have a modeling section where you can model, and then finally you have a visualization section. Okay, so these are 3 key buttons that you need to keep an eye on. At the bottom, you'll get pages, so you can create more pages if you need to. So it's like sheets in Excel. And then on the right is where you've got your filter information, the different types of visualizations and fields that you possibly want to then suck in from the tables that you've brought out from the SQL database. Okay, so first step, how do we connect to the data? So in the top here in the home page in this ribbon, you have this get data option. Now there's plenty of different data sets you can connect to. What I'm going to show you today is SQL data, but you can connect to any data set you've got. So if you've got table formats in Excel, you can dial into that. Any other type of analysis services, or if you click on more, it will show you the full list of options you can actually connect to. I think that's just gone a bit blank. Let's try that again. Where's it gone? It's not showing me that screen. There it is. Right, okay. So here's your get data, and when it's set to all, these are all the different types of connections that Power BI support. So if you look through this list, you can see that there's loads. There's Dynamics, there's Azure databases, Google Analytics, websites, loads of different ones, and they keep adding more to this list as you go on. So we'll be looking at SQL. So if I close out of this window, there is just a button at the top here that will allow you to connect straight to the SQL Server. So these bits are a little bit technical. For a normal Sage 200 user, this is maybe something you won't do. You may need IT to get involved. So with setting this up to get the data in, you may need IT to get involved to assist you, or possibly somebody from experience to assist you getting the connections in, getting your tables in, if that's something you need assistance with. So here it's going to ask you what the server instance is and what your database is you're connecting to. So if I just grab that information, I'm just going to paste it in. So now I'm going to grab my database name. So this would be your Sage 200 company name. And then we're going to bring it in. Now you can do an import or you can do a direct query. We normally recommend import. Direct query will talk to the database and it takes more lag on the server. The import just sucks it in and then it will do all the information once it's imported it. So it's a little bit quicker. Okay, so we'll bring in this connection. It should authenticate me now with my credentials, and then now we're looking at the same table structure we was looking at when we looked at the SQL instance. Okay, so a little bit of, now with Sage, there are lots and lots of tables. There are so many tables in the back end, it can get complex. So this is the second sort of area that you may find a little bit problematic if you don't know where the data is in the back end. So it's more trial and error. The more you play with it, the more you learn, the more you'll understand where the information is. Now you can use a search function at the top, which will start to then look for the words you type in. So if I type customer, it's now going to show me every table in the back end that does have customer. Now with the terminology SL sales ledger, you'll find PL for purchase ledger, NL for nominal ledger. They use POP for purchase order processing, SOP for sales order processing. So learning the naming conventions will help as you try to suck in this information. So at this point, what I'm going to do, what I'd normally do is I'd say, okay, let's bring in the customer, let's bring in the customer address, let's bring in the sales orders, and then we can start to then manipulate that data. So in this case, because of time, I'm not actually going to flip in and then suck in this data from here. I'm going to actually at this point just flip over to my other sheet that I have. Okay, so this is a sheet that we set up that I actually use when I come out and I do Power BI training. We set up this Power BI pack for users, and we hand this out. We connect it to your data set, and then you can play with these sheets if need be to help you learn Power BI to then go ahead and build your own or to tweak the ones that I've already created. So once you do suck in that data, what you can see here, here's the tables that I actually originally sucked in for this particular file that I'm using. After you suck it in, it will take you straight over to this relationships area, which is the button at the bottom of the left side, the model area. So this is now looking at the tables that I've just pulled back from the SQL instance, and Power BI will try to automatically get the joins done, so it knows how to talk to each of these tables on the unique IDs. So if I click on this line here, you can see that the customer account table joins to the customer location table using a customer ID. So that's how it knows which locations link back to a particular customer. Okay, now BI will try to do this for you. It looks at the data first. If in some instance it can't, then that's the case where you would have to do it yourself. And it's a case of just dragging and dropping the items across from one table to another. Or if you double click on the line or go to manage relationships, it will show you all of the tables you brought in and what links they've currently got associated with them. So it's customer ID on ID, ID on ID, and so forth. If you edit, that's the same as double clicking on the line that you see so far. And here it shows you in the gray highlighted what data it's actually going to try and join that. It looks at the data, tries to find where there's a match and says, okay, I think this is what the relationship should be. Okay, so that's your bit on the relationships. Hopefully BI will do them for you. You know, as soon as you suck them in, it looks at that data and it will go ahead and say, okay, this is what I think the relationships are. So it's just a little review you want to be doing to make sure that your relationships are correct. So when you visualize, other tables visualize correctly because the links are there in the back end. Okay, so that's the little area on doing your relationships. Once you've got relationships set up, the next step, what you want to do is to do a little bit of modeling with the data. Now, what the modeling's for is to set data types, to go ahead and say that this is a whole number. Again, BI will pick up on what it sees in that data and try to assign the data type correctly, but you can go ahead and say that this is, override this data type to something else if it's not quite right what you think it is. All of the functions you see in here, because it's a Microsoft product, it's very similar to what other Microsoft products. So in this case, like Excel, you're going to have all of the Excel filtering. If you click on the drop down arrows, and you can start to narrow this data down for the data that you really need for this particular report, because the more data you've got here that you're not going to use, then your queries are going to take a lot longer to run. So it's a bit of a tedious job, but once you've actually set up your sheets correctly, come back to the model and remove any of the columns you don't need, because it will then speed up your reports when they're actually refreshing. Okay, so if you look at the top, you've got data types and you have data categories, city, postcodes, and so forth. So for the geo maps, if you try to set anything that's either a city or a postcode or a country and label it correctly with that data type, then your maps will work a bit better. Okay, so that was the part where you can do modeling, and the key area for the modeling is to get your data smaller to only have so your queries run a lot quicker. And you can manipulate the data here to say, okay, I only want to see people in US, or I only want to see people in England, and so forth, to narrow that data set down. Once you've narrowed your data set down, then we come over to the report tab, and here's where we can actually build the visualizations. So I've got various tabs here at the bottom. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll go through a few key ones, but what you can see is here I have a slicing and dicing. Every time I select one of my elements in the visualization on this side, if I close some of these down and just open the visualization, it will highlight the current one that I've got. So this is a slicer that we're currently using. If I click on this one, you can see it's jumped to this table, stacked bar chart. If I click on this one, you can see it's using a geo map. Okay, so basically whatever you select, it's going to show you what visualization it is. Below that, you have visualize settings. Okay, so if I come back to the customer account and just open up filters and open up this. Okay, so you can see how I build these. So if I select this first element that I've got here, in my fields, it will highlight what fields are used from which tables to pull back this information. So you can see it's highlighted customer account. If I open this up, it's going to show me all the fields within the customer account, and the ones that I've got the ticks is what I've actually used. And where have I used that? I dragged it down into this field section. It's just a matter of a drag and drop into there, and then it will then link that customer account to this particular slicer and dicer. Okay, other bits I've not turned on, but the other key area to remember on visualizations is the rollable. The rollable will give you formatting options. So from here, there's plenty of different formatting, coloring, positions, slicing controls, titles, backgrounds, and so forth. So this is where you can change the look and feel of what you've selected. As this is a slicer, if I do go and select one of these elements, the actual sheet, I don't know if you see that, it does actually refresh as I'm doing this. So if I select everything, it's now refreshed the entire sheet, all my maps selected with all different locations, so all my document numbers. If I click on just this one document number, the sheet again will refresh down to only show me information for this one particular order. Who was it, what was the order number information, and the item descriptions, document totals, and what years it was done in. When you select items on the slicer, to unselect, you just click on it again. So if I click on it, it's going to select one line. To unselect, you click on it again to go back, select something else, and it's now going to only show you the information for the new selected item. Now with the visualizations, you click on anything. If I go down to this country that I've got here, if you click on this country one, it's a counter by country. If I look at what I used for here, it was date, time created, and the country in the values. So if I now select on 2014, all my data is going to snap down to show me the 2014 information. If I go through and select 15, it will go through and show me 2015 information. And you can see that's how it's built up. The table is also selectable. So if I just unselect these, clicking on it twice, it's unselected. If I select something within the table, it's selectable as well. I think I need to just quickly come over to here and flip that around. Get rid of that. So I've just added a new element, which I'm just going to get rid of. I don't need that. Okay. Now with my table. Okay. Okay, so all of your table elements also, you can do the normal selecting on the column headers to then order that into a different order, and then the report will order the information accordingly. I've also got conditional formatting on this table. So if I select this particular table and look through to its drill down information, we should see that in its filter, we've got its conditional formatting, field formatting down here. And that's where we're adding the conditional formatting information. So again, in the rollable, for each element you select, you're going to get different options depending on what sort of filter you've actually used. Okay, so that's a little bit about how you'd set up these filters and how you drag information out onto there. So if I select this order one here, and you look at the first tab, it goes by document number, and the value is going to go by the total net value. And if I close these slices down, you can see that that information is all coming from the order return table. Okay, so that's how you can go ahead and start to add elements onto the document. Once you add elements onto the document, you say what fields those document, the visualization will use, and then you can have formatting on top of that to then sort of format and turn the visualizations look and feel to suit your needs. Okay, so that's the final part when you come into the visualization section. When you are doing your data querying, there is one other editor you can go into, which gives you a little bit more powerful editing, and that's within the transform data, and you've got this transform data option. This allows you to do more complex modeling within your Power BI report. So you have the modeling tab, which I showed you earlier, and then you have this transform data, which opens up the Power Query editor. So people that have Excel, advanced Excel skills, they probably know what the Power Query editor is. It's used in that. But again, it's very, very similar to Excel's slicing and dicing, number filters, and doing the same as what I showed you in the modeling. On top of that, what you can also do is you can come in and grab your tables that you've brought in and make new copies of them and then manipulate them. So in this case, what I've done is I had the sales order return table, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to only see sales orders that come in today. So I wanted to create a dashboard that would then show me sales orders for today. When it refreshes, it updates and lets me know all the sales orders that have come into the system. Now, this is something they can possibly have on a big, screen in the office. And then as the orders come through the day, the scheduled refresh can refresh every 10, 15 minutes, and then you'll get up-to-date information of sales orders that are coming through the day. So the way I needed to do that, I said, okay, I want to keep my order return table full with everything, but then I want a copy of this table. So right-clicking on this table, I could do a duplicate. So I duplicated the table and created a new copy of it, and I called it sales order return today. And in this particular table, I went and applied some steps. So here you can see there's applied steps. Now there's no undo or go back. If you create a new table and start doing changes to it, it records it in this steps area, and then you can remove these steps to go back, or you can go and edit them. So if I go and have a look at my filtered row step and hit the cog next to it, you'll see it will show me what I've done with the filter. So in here again, it's like Excel. So I said in when it is a particular day, and it is today. So what this is going to query is going to query the sales order return table and then only bring back orders that are done for today, and then put them into Power BI. So how would this work? If I just come out of here and just go back to, so I'm going to come out of this query editor now. Just before I do, you've got slight options at the top here. So you can come in, you've got transform options, again, data types, whole numbers, it's the sort of statistic information if you want to add in, but it's the data types that are the key bits within here that you want to be setting. You can add columns, custom columns, to say that this column plus this column equals this column. So then you can have concatenated columns and so forth. So that's everything can be done using these toolbars buttons at the top, using the ribbons. Okay, so I'm going to just come out of this particular screen. Oops. I hope I didn't just close my BI session there. No, I didn't. Cool. Okay, now if I come over to these two tabs, here we go. So I've got a couple ones here called today's sales by salesperson and today's sales by last person. So currently this is not showing anything because these ones are looking at the today table. If I select on any of this information, all the queries are running for the today table. And currently there's no transactions gone in for today, so it's not showing any transactions. So what I'm going to quickly do is just jump over to Sage and just put in a couple of sales orders. Right, okay, so I'm in my sales order list. I've got a new order. Oops, haha, that's good. Sage has just given me an error. I think it's because Sage has been running, so I'm just going to close it. Start it again. Sage was running while my VM has been turned on and off, so I'm just going to restart Sage. Okay, so coming into Sage, let's go over to sales order list. Let's go add a new order. I'm going to use the copy order function, and we'll create one for Petak. Okay, save that down. So this is coming at 1,000. And I'll just go ahead and create one more. Okay, so there's another one for Abby. This one's for 100. Save that down. Okay, so I'm just going to put 2 sales orders in. So if I now go back to my Power BI sheet, obviously I'm going to manually refresh this, but if this was something that was published, you'd set up a gateway, which I'll talk briefly about a little bit later. The gateway basically would sit on a server type location, and it would sit there on the scheduled refresh and refresh at whatever intervals we tell it to. But in my case, I'm going to come in and hit refresh, which will do the same job. It's now going to go and query all those tables back into the SQL instance and go and import that data back into Power BI with the new information. So again, because I've not done full modeling in my data set, it's running lots of queries here. So the more modeling we would have done and tidied up this information, the less queries it's got to run. Okay, so we're done. So that's now fully refreshed. It's come back with number of sales 2. The last sale, the top order, was done by administrator me. The highest one was 1,000. And here's the line values that it's brought back. Okay, if we look at top sales, again, we've got here today's top sales of 100K. So this is how you can see that BI can go back and pull through the information, suck it through from just today's sales. So that's something that I did using the advanced modeling, which is done via transform data and using this transform data option. And then right clicking on the tables from here, right click on them, duplicate them, make the duplicate of the table, do whatever you need to do with from the original, and then you've still got your original sales order table to do work with, and you've got your today's one to do today's work.
Michelle, while you're just on this section, it kind of ties in quite nicely with a question Isaac's asked. Is it about we want to delete unwanted columns from a particular table? Do you sort of untick the column, or do you delete?
It's just a right click and delete. So if I come back to this particular model tab, if you right click on any of these options, you've got delete. So it's very similar to, again, like I say, to Excel. Any functions that you think, oh, how do I do something? I'd always think of, well, how does Excel do it? And it's exactly the same. Just go up to that column, right click on it, and then go ahead and delete. And you can do your multiple selections, I believe, as well. I think, can you do that on here? In this case, I'm not sure. I'm doing a query editor, maybe. But yeah, it's just simple. Right click and delete. Cancel that. Okay, so what else do I have in any of these sheets? Is there anything here? So I've done one with customers with no sales in the last 6 months with conditional formatting on the particular table, showing me in higher, different color bands on, the highest outstanding debt that we've got. So you can think about this in many different ways. I've used queries done from SQL to bring the data in from normal SQL table bases. I have in my training also done stuff with nominal reporting for balance sheet type reporting, which we had to write SQL views in the back end. So we get a program, or anybody who knows how to write SQL, to write a query in the back end, which pulls back the information how you need it. And then you can suck in that query of using the import routine exactly the same way, but you just select the query name, and then you work from the SQL view to produce the visualizations you want to do. So there's various ways of doing it. If you don't quite understand where the data is in the back end, then you can always speak to experience, and then we can assist if need be in either creating SQL views or assisting in getting the data in. And once it's in, you can then start to visualize and play with the data. And then again, if you still need further assistance, then we're always here to assist if need be. Okay, so we've talked about sucking the data in, which was coming from get data, and sucking SQL, or they've actually just got the button here for the SQL instance. You need to make sure you have access to actually read the data from the SQL instance, otherwise you'll get an error. Once you get the data in, you can then manipulate the data, remove columns, filter the columns, create new columns or new tables using the Power Query editor. Functionality doing all of this is very similar to Excel. So you've got the drop downs for filtering, you've got the right click options for sorting or deleting, and so forth. Once you've brought the data in, it's the visualization steps. So if I just create a new sheet, actually, so if I do a new sheet here as a quick example, if I come to the customer account table, what I can do is I can just start to click on some of the information within the customer account. So let's say the customer account number. If I say, I think there should be a balance in here somewhere. Is it account balance? Yeah, we got account balance at the top. Okay, so just by clicking on those 3 fields, it brought in my table with the account balance. If I then click away and then say, right, let's click on the GL map, it can add the GL map to the page. and then I can say in the location, if I close the customer account table, open up the location table, and then pick postcode, it's now plotting all of the postcodes across this map. Now, if I click on one of these, it should.
Just to clarify, so you click on the map and then you choose the location field and drag postcode into that.
Exactly.
I
So
think that
what I clicked
tie
on
it back to the first table. Then is that
in the
ultimately?
first table, what it's done, it's basically in the values, as I tick them, it added the customer account, the account number, and the balance, which are the column headers that you see. And then on the map, I just said add the postcode.
So
And then if I wanted to,
together, has it? So if you click a customer in table 1, it will update the postcode in table 2. Will it? Is that or the map?
yes. So even if you click on the items in the map, you can see it's then now filtering those locations in the table.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. If I then bring in a bar chart, so let's say I'll click on the first item here, click on this bar chart, and then I'll say, okay, what do we want in here? So in the axes, I'll say, let's get the customer account. So I'm going to open this up. Okay, go down to the field we're looking for. So let's say in the axes, let's put the customer account. In the legend, we can say, let's do it by country.
So the axis is the left-hand side. Is it the left-hand side of the chart?
Yeah, so that's what we're going to see in the axes information. So in the legend, I'm going to put country, and then the value I'm going to put net total. We'll get that from the order return. So I think it's total net. So again, knowing where the information is in the back end, it's sometimes going to be the most difficult part to figure out. So there, right. So now what I've said is in the axes, show me the customer account. In the legend, I want the country, so that's the coloring. And then the value is what's bringing back these figures. So now if I just make this, organize this a bit, I've just selected a line, so I'm going to unselect the line, drag this down. Right, and then what we can do, at the top here, you have these 3 dots. Now, this is something that's not very clear. On every visualization, you'll see these 3 dots, this slicing, and it gives you some slight additional information. And what I want to do is sort this descending. So now it's going to go top to bottom. Okay, so very quickly there, I have now just created, very quickly, if I select on this, what it's going to do is show me in here the relevant account that it relates to. And if I click down on any of the items within here, it will narrow down the list the other way around. Okay, so that's very briefly just showing you how you'd start to create something from scratch. If you wanted to then add formatting to any of these, remember it's the rollable. The first icon is where you're going to configure the fields that are going to make the visualization. After that, you've got the rollable, which will then give you lots more sort of formatting options that you can sort of do with the particular areas you're using.
Michelle, we just had another question. Michelle's asked, what's the difference between sort of BI and pulling information into pivot tables and doing charts, etc., from that sort of straight in Excel?
In Excel, okay. So with when you do that in Excel, you can do your pivots and bring in the data, but you're not going to get these dynamic visualizations as good as what you get in BI. BI will allow you to bring in multiple sources, so from Excel, from SQL, from any other data source you may have, and then bring them into a sheet. Then after that, what you can also do, which I've not quite showed you, is the publishing part. So once you publish this information, you can then access it anywhere around the world. So exactly the same as me having this particular sheet here, the COVID one that I'm looking at, that's published online to a public facing. Or you can publish this to organizational people. You put Power BI on your handheld or on your iPad or tablet, and then you can access these reports anywhere around the world and they auto refresh. So it is similar to doing similar things to how you do it in Excel, but it's just some of these additional BI functions that you've got, where you've got all of the additional data sources you can bring in one go, which you can do in Excel as well. But then it's the publishing part, which you've got the sharing capability, the role access that, you know, different people can see different areas of the same sheet, and it's accessible everywhere around the world. I hope, does that answer your question? If there's anything outstanding, just keep sending them through.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so that's basically how I just created this new sheet. So I basically created a brand new sheet. I created this first table first, and all I did to create this table is I started to click on the items within this field. Then I said, right, I want to then show a map of locations. So I clicked on a blank empty space on the canvas and then hit the GL map. And in the I've just clicked on GL, I didn't want to do that. So let's just select that and delete it. Oh, I changed it, Control Z.
Vishal, I've got another question. It's probably tied to the side, but Andrew's asked, how do you get the data to auto refresh when not in the office, i.e. if you're on your smartphone or tablet, I
Yeah.
suppose?
Okay. So basically that's so what happens with refreshing, which I'll quickly go into. So the last step after you've created your visualizations, you've brought the data in, you've modeled your data, you've created visualizations, you've got your sheet set up, they're all good to go. You say, okay, and now I want to access this on my phone. So what you would do is you would hit this publish button. So if I click on this publish button, it's going to ask me to save changes, and then what it does is it grabs all the information from your Power BI report, and I'm going to have to sign in. Give me a second.
Probably worth adding a point here. There's different license types for Power BI. There's Power BI Desktop, which is a free download, so anybody can download that. You go to the Microsoft website, just do a Google search for it, and then you can download Power BI Desktop, which is free. But if you want to publish, as Vishal is doing here, I believe it's the premium license, isn't it? Power BI.
Right. So yeah, just before that. So anyone I believe can publish if you've just got this desktop version and you've signed up to an account. Is when you want to start doing the sharing and organizational sharing against two other team members. That's when I believe it needs the pro license. So if you just install it yourself, you publish it online, you put it onto your app, and you access it. I don't think there's any charges for that. It'll work. It's only when you start to do sharing. Now, when you start to use any of those functions in BI and you try to share or you try to do anything that requires the pro license, it will tell you. So if you set something up or you try to publish or you try to share, it will say, look, you will need to have a pro license to do this. So certain functions are free. Generally, if you're using it just for yourself, is what I normally say, just you accessing it online and you doing bits, you can get away without having the pro. It's when you start doing the multiple sharing, the organizational stuff, and some of more the advanced functions is when you require the pro license. Right. So I've just hit the publish. It asked me to sign in, so I signed in, and then what it's doing now, it's asking me to select a destination. So you have various destinations on the online area. I'm not going to talk about too much on the online. If we do get requests about the publishing site, we could possibly set up another session for just the online. But again, the online, it's got quite a lot of bits on there as well, but it's similar to what you see in the desktop, but it's done online with a few limitations. So I'm just going to select the default location and add it.
Vishal,
Go on,
what are those
Simon.
destinations? Sorry.
Say that again.
What are those destinations? Sorry, that's something.
Yeah. So when you publish to online, you can create destinations online. So you can have my workspace, another dashboard, and so forth. You will see that in a moment. So again, this is a little bit of functionality of what you get online. The first time you do that, it will just go to a default destination. But you can have multiple destinations online on the online service where you can hold your presentations that you're sending to the service.
And can you then restrict who can access those destinations? Is that sort of
So once we've now published, it says success. It's gone to that destination. If I say open it, it's now going to fire up a web browser. And is it asking me to sign into the web browser? I'm just going to again put in my credentials for the online. Okay. Okay, it's my laptop, that's fine. Right, so this is now logging on to the service. They call this the Power BI service. The desktop is the app that you have on your desktop. The service is what you can log on to online and see anything that you've created online or the services you've pushed from your desktop to the online service. So you just got to think of those as two different areas, the Power BI desktop and then the Power BI service. So here I'm logged onto the service, and we can see we're looking at that same sheet that I just looked at on the desktop application, but now this is online and it has the same functionality. So it will do all of its slicing and dicing, all of the filters will update exactly the same as how you'd see them updating when you're doing them on the desktop application. If we go to our top customer sales, there are the 2 sales that I added today. Again, so if anybody who had access to this on a device or a web browser, you would see this information. Now, back to that question that we had from the users. Apologies, I forgot the name. But at the top here, you've got a few options, and one of them is called downloads. And from here, you've got the data gateway. Now, the data gateway is what actually does your automatic refreshing. So again, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but it's a gateway that you generally sit on a server type location, a machine that doesn't turn off. It has access to the Power BI file, and then you set up the scheduled refreshes for that to then suck the data into that Power BI file and publish it for you online. So it's all done via a data gateway. Okay. If I come over now, with the application, Microsoft update it very, very regularly. I think they update the service once a week and they update the desktop once a month or vice versa. So it does change quite a lot every time you come into it. So I'm just going to have a look. This menu has changed a little bit. There should be an area in here where I should see my data sets. Where have they put it? So if I go to Power BI here, home, okay, right down here. So here we can see all of the bits that I've shared out with all of my people and the different data sets that we have. So if I go to my workspace, here's the report that we've got, and then here's the data set. So the data set is where it's getting the information from, and then the report is what we're looking at. If I click on the data set, so under my workspace and data set, here's where it's going to show me my data set that we're looking at, and you've got 3 little dots here for the menu, and in this menu there's an option for scheduled refresh. Okay, so we pick the data set that we want refreshing to happen on, and then we go to scheduled refresh, and here is where we have database connection. So this will then look at the gateway that you set up, and then it can then go ahead and schedule its refresh, and then basically you can have it here to do it daily, hourly, and so forth. Okay, so again, the Power BI service, I'm not going to go into too much detail today, but basically that is where you create all your data sets in the desktop application, push them all online, and then you can schedule your refreshing on your data sets. So then whoever has access to these data sets will be seeing up-to-date information according to your refresh schedule. Okay. Okay, so here's the dashboards that we was looking at earlier. If we go into your workspaces area, these were my different workspaces that I had set up. And basically these are all the reports that I've got within these data sets. Okay, so that in a gist is basically how Power BI would work, from all the way to creating your original Power BI sheet, creating your SQL connection, get your data in, make sure your relationships are correct, model your data, tidy the data up, remove columns, filter the columns to get rid of data that you don't need, then visualize your data, create different visualizations, dragging your fields out, select the visualization you want, and then in the visualization options, in the axes, legend, and values, you can drag the fields from the tables that you've brought in. Using the rollable, you can then format the data that you've got, and you can continue to add different visualizations from this sheet here, from this section here, should I say, to then add different types of visualizations you may want to see. Okay, and then once finally you've done your visualizations, you publish. Once you've published them, they'll all become online. Once they're online, if you actually put the app on, download the app from the App Store on your phones or your tablet devices, sign in using the same credentials, you will then be basically dialed onto the service on your phone or handheld device. Okay, and then the other key areas is basically using the ribbon. So in the ribbon, you're inserting for visuals, for new pages, buttons and shapes, modeling, so new tables, manage roles. Roles is an area that I've not talked about, but it is a good role. How roles would work is you could have one sheet, and then you can create roles. So if I hit the create button here, you could give it something like region. No, call it, I don't know, north. West region, let's say, something like that, northwest. And then in the location, you would go ahead and add a filter, and you could either do it by country, county, depending on how you want to do it. But for an example, let's just select city. Okay, so then you would say where the city is, Peterborough. Okay, and then that will then create, I probably should have called this Peterborough, but you can keep creating different roles and add filters to them, and then you assign the role to the member you've shared this out to. So what that then allows you to do is the same sheet can be accessed by 4 different people, and if you had 4 roles on there for Peterborough, London, Manchester, when they log on, they're only going to see the data that relates to them. So this roles area is quite good. I believe it is a pro function, but it allows you to have one data sheet that can go to 10 different people that only show them the information they need to see. So the roles are good. It's something that if you are going to be doing sharing and using organizational sharing, then set up roles, and people will only see the information relating to them from the same sheet. Okay, so that's your role information that you have in your modeling. Okay, so I think we're coming up to about nearly 1:45. Is there any other questions or queries that anybody has that would like me to sort of go through? Or if there's anything that does come up now or after, just drop us an email, and then we'll come back to you with any questions that you may need answering.
Are there any other areas you'd like Vishal to go over again, or just sort of a run through? Just let us know.
Okay, now I think that everybody's okay, Simon, by the looks of it.
No, it looks jolly good. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today. I know it's quite a lot to cover. I mean, Power BI is a big topic. So, we've got a question just come through. When roles are set up, are they applicable across all sheets in the file?
I believe the role will be. I believe that's a good question. I want to double check on that. I would say it's going to work against the entire file. Yeah, so not the individual sheets, because in my case I've created multiple sheets in this testing sort of demo file that I've created. Generally, people probably won't do so much. They'll probably have 1 or 2 sheets per Power BI file. So I will double check that. That was something that I'll make a note of. But I believe it is per file, not per sheet.
Okay, thank you for that question, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. That no one's actually asked me that one before, but I believe it's going to be per sheet, because once you're doing the roles, it doesn't ask you about the sheet information. It's just asking you, what criteria you need to filter for.
As Vishal touched on, I think the roles are really useful things. You can build those kind of central reports, but then
Exactly.
just filter it out to the audience,
Yeah,
but no, you just see the data they need to see, really. So
exactly. Good luck for sales reps or people that are looking at different account managers and so forth.
Yeah. Okay, guys, thank you. We really appreciate you all taking the time. Oh, no, one more question. If data source is Excel, do you just select the Excel get data, and afterwards is it then the same process to follow?
Yeah. Okay. With getting in the data sources, this all slightly different on the way you get the data in. But once it's in, the relationships modeling and visualization is exactly the same. With Excel, you just need to make sure that if you've got your Excel sheet and it's got its columns and it's got the data, that Excel sheet, that the data in it needs to be in an Excel table format. So you just need to make sure you've created it and it's a table format in Excel, which assume people should know how to do. You just select on it and just say create table, and then it looks at what range it needs to create a table for, and then creates a table for you, which you can then start filtering and dicing. As soon as you save that down, you can name your tables in Excel, so you can give them a relevant name once you've saved it as a table in Excel. And then when you do the import Excel sheet, it looks at what tables are sitting in that sheet for you to then import. So that's the only key thing you need to remember. If you're trying to bring in something from Excel, if it's just raw data in Excel, it won't find it. It has to be converted into a table in Excel, save it down, and then import, and it will find the table for you to bring into Power BI. And then everything else is the same, exactly how I showed you.
I think the create table functions under the insert menu, I believe, in Excel.
Yes, under insert.
A quick
And I think,
Google will tell you. But yeah, it's just a little function in there, create table, as Vishal said, and then it kind
yeah,
of is accessible.
yeah.
Any other
Okay.
questions at all we can think of, or? I'm sure if something springs to mind after the session, just you'll have our email address, so just feel free to
Yep.
fire us across, and
Just
we'll
fire across any questions you have, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can.
Okay, guys, thank you. Oh, one more. If you want to link Excel to Sage, do you need to find a relationship?
To link Excel to Sage. Yeah, so basically once you've got the tables in and you've got a Sage table in, you would need to find that same relationship from your Excel sheet. So in the example that I was giving earlier, it was looking at the customer ID. So where we've got the customer ID, your Excel sheet would have to have a column in it with a customer ID that links to that set of data, and then you just map it on that ID, and it will know how to go and get that particular information.
With the nature of the Sage database, you have those 20 analysis codes. So if there's not an obvious field, you can sometimes create one. But yeah, as Vishal said, you do need to have something that ties the two tables together. One other question's come up. Can you perform calculation functions?
Yes, you can do all Excel calculations. So if you're familiar with how Excel does its calculations, in here you have these new measures and quick measures and new columns. And when you create a new column, it basically gives you the same formatting you have when you're doing in Excel. So again, it's more of Excel's Power Query, but you do have all of the same functionality. I think if I click on new column, it's just waiting. I've just clicked on to create a measure rather than column. When you come into here and it says the measure equals, you just put in the formatting like you would in Excel. Same as when you're creating a column, you can say, writing in formulas the way you would in Excel, it will pick back the functionality that you're sort of looking at. It's got all of the signs and functions that you would have for calculations, and then you would just go ahead and do the same functionality exactly how you would do in Excel. So for creating new columns, creating new measures, it's a little bit more advanced. There's plenty of documentation on the Power BI side on how you do this, or we can always provide you with further information if you require it. But yeah, anything you can do in Excel, you can do it in Power BI.
Jolly good. Well, again, thank you guys. I really appreciate you all taking the time to chat with us today. Thank you for that. And as I say, you've got our details. Please feel free to fire out any questions that spring to mind that you'd like to cover. What's the last slide, Vishal? Don't know if you guys have seen, but I hope you have on our web page. You see the address there, but it's pretty available straight on the front page of our website. There is various sessions we're running. So this is just one of those. Some other sessions on Sage 200, on Cloud, on Teams, Office 365. So they're all free, and hopefully they're all hopefully they are all very useful. We're covering kind of areas of functionality people haven't really come across, or I did the Teams session and found it really useful, for instance. So yeah, feel free to log on to that web page, have a look what else is available, and sign up for anything that's of interest. And thank you again, guys. I really appreciate you all taking the time to chat with us today. As I say, any questions, any queries, just fire an email across, and we'll certainly help.
Okay, thank you very much, guys, and hope you all enjoyed the presentation.
Enjoy the rest of your day, guys. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.